On February 7, 2024, a 16-year-old sophomore was attacked by their classmates and had to go to their hospital. One day later, they were pronounced dead. This is the ongoing story of Nex Benedict's death, a non-binary teenager living in the United States. Following their tragic death, Nex's own mother said, "We are sorry we overlooked them." With an entire political party in the United States rapidly pushing out anti-LGBTQ policy in states across the country, stories like this are not coming from nowhere, and unfortunately it probably won't be the last. So let's talk about it. My name is Isaias Hernandez, and this is Queer Brown Vegan. My platform is to bring you environmental education that's focusing on intersectional issues rather than ignoring them. If you like what you see here, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because it helps me grow my channel and bring you more educational content. Most people favor protecting trans people from discrimination according to the PEW Research Center. So why do we still see so much transphobia and hatred towards LGBTQ+ people? 60% of US adults believe gender is the same as assigned to sex and birth, which is not a good situation to be in. What happened to Nex Benedict is an example of what happens in a society that doesn't recognize diversity and change and instead punishes it. The truth is, it's not for everyone. In fact, there's a serious problem. It's become a partisan culture war issue. So Democrats and left-leaning people are more than 4 times as likely as Republicans and right-wingers to understand that someone's gender can be different from the sex they were assigned at birth, from 61% versus 13%. Now, Democrats are also more likely than Republicans to say our society hasn't gone far enough in accepting people who are transgender, which is 59% versus 10%. A point of concern is that 66% of Republicans say society has gone too far in accepting people who are transgender. This is not about public health or children's well-being, which can be reinforced through gender-affirming care and meaningful guidance on gender expression. Transgender and non-binary youth disproportionately experience negative mental health impacts, and gender-affirming care helps make that better, with 60% lower odds of moderate or severe depression and 73% of lower odds of suicidality over a 12-month follow-up. Nex Benedict was non-binary, so why am I using transgender stats? These issues are interconnected, and the research often goes hand in hand. With the legalization of gay marriage, trans and non-binary identities became the next target for right-wing politics. Notice these aren't policies about our economies, our environments, our education, our infrastructure. No, this is just about control and using the government to take that control. I made a post and video about queer ecology, which looks at the diversity and gender and sexuality in nature, and is at least part of why this is relevant now. We are not only living things that go beyond gender binaries or even changes sexes. Our society is designed around the cisgender norms in many ways, and part of our disconnect from our bodies and our identities by these norms is where the bigotry is rooted. It's worth noticing that the mental health issues facing LGBTQ youth are also at least partially a result of things like hate crimes and social exclusion. As the climate crisis worsens and we expect our leadership to focus important issues like pollution or economic justice or taking on corporate influence, we're watching an entire political party devote itself to things that should be none of the government's business. In part, this is because of extreme evangelical views and the push for religious dominance in a country that's supposed to be built on freedom and diversity of faith. For example, the majority of white evangelical Protestants say that society has gone too far in accepting people who are transgender. In contrast, most religiously unaffiliated Americans, 58%, say that person's gender can be different from their sex assigned at birth, with atheists 76% and agnostics 67%, especially likely to hold this view. So when you consider that the First Amendment, the separation of church and state, how these communities get marginalized, the increase of transphobia and hate crimes on LGBT people's mental health challenges, it's really about bringing this up to question. Is this about the well-being of people in this country, or this is about using government and religion to control people? So Nex Benedict is just the latest example, and it's something we have to take seriously because discrimination and oppression shouldn't be a policy position, especially shouldn't be the one that's dominating our political conversation. There's no easy way forward, no easy way to undo the damage that has been done, but if we can at least start calling this for what it is, the house of cards will begin to fall. There's room here for all of us and in the fullness of our identities, and if we're living in a world and society where our multifaceted identities and how things have been designed, it can be done differently. I wanted to note that Nex Benedict was also indigenous, which is often left out from many conversations too, is that indigenous communities, especially those who are trans or also two-spirit, also face high rates of discrimination. And I think it is important for us to know that a lot of media news outlets were removing, and also creators were talking about Nex Benedict and removing their identity as an indigenous individual. It is very important for us to not erase that identity of the cultural aspect where Nex came from. I think for environmentalists, we think about like, why does queerness or LGBTQ plus people matter? Is that we still have a problem in the environmental movement. I've seen such very disgraceful acts from environmentalists treating queer and trans environmentalists. And as someone who is queer in the environmental movement, I don't understand why people who are against trans and homophobic people are preaching that they care for the planet, when they should just be honest and transparent and say that they only care about the planet for select few identities. Because to me, when I've seen the mistreatment and also the disvalidation amongst my research and my ongoing work, I've often have to really understand, like, where is this coming from? Is this coming from a place of threat? And I recognize that for a lot of cis heteronormative men, they are threatened by queerness, because I think queerness challenges the norm of power. And I think for a queer person myself to be in this environmental movement is that I want to give room to queer environmentalists who never had the opportunity to express themselves. When I would open textbooks, I never saw anyone that looked like me, never saw anyone that talked about queerness. The more that we represent ourselves, the more that we put our stories out there, the more that we show up for our communities, the more that these communities that hate us and have so much hatred towards queer and trans communities, the less power that they will have. And I think that's where we have to recognize that as we see the constant targeting towards trans communities, that does not allow people who are either gay men or lesbian women to really exclude ourselves from this conversation. Is that our work for LGBTQ liberation is tied into climate liberation. So I'm not just talking about my identity, I'm talking about trans identities, people who are non-binary, people who are femme. Like, we need to understand that our work to fight for an ecological future is based on the foundation and protection of queer and trans rights. You cannot remove queer and trans people from these ecological systems, because our histories have always noted that we have existed. And the dominance of Western religions, like, I don't want to say like Christianity, but like evangelical Christianity and Christian fundamentalism that is being spread across different countries in the global south, it is very unnatural to see. I don't find an issue about people practicing religions. I see an issue when people practice their religions to oppress another group. People like that should not be pushing for policies that are going to harm our communities. And the direct correlation of Nex's death was fueled by transphobia hate. I mean, you see social media, you go on my social media pages, I get so much hate from people who just don't want me alive because I'm queer. And I just realized that, like, it's such a disgusting world that we are thinking to ourselves that society is getting better, but it's getting worse in certain parts. So we need to work together to kind of create a better system for everyone. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like the video, leave a comment with something that you learned about or topics you'd like for me to explore in the future, and subscribe to the channel if you like what you saw. Thank you so much again for everyone for watching.